This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Cyber Frontiers, show number 20, recorded on April 27th, 2015. Here on Cyber Frontiers, we explore cybersecurity, big data, and the technologies that are shaping the future, all from an academic perspective. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in Bellevue, Nebraska. We post a show with world-class show notes out at the AverageGuy.tv. If you have questions, comments, or contributions, of course, you can contact us. Send us an email, jim@theaverageguy.tv. You can find us on Twitter @jcollison. That's really the best account to use. We do have at the Average Guy TV, that works as well, but I do some auto tweeting from that one, so follow @jcollison. And now you can call in those questions, 402-478-8450. We'll play them right here on the program. Let's play Stump the Guys. So give us some really hard questions. Kevin is doing in response to that. We'll talk about that here in a second. And of course, the AverageGuy.tv is powered by Maple Grove Partners Web Hosting, secure, reliable, super fast, super high speed, super dependable. Although a little blip today. For more information, visit Maple Grove Partners, maplegrovepartners.com. The best deal about that is I just say, hey, Christian, what's going on? He's like, it's fixed. So that's the greatest kind of tech support in the world, Christian. I appreciate that. Now, Cyber Frontiers is a part of the Geeks Network. You can find the links to this show and many other great podcasts out at thegeeksnetwork.com. All right, we kind of have a unique show tonight in the sense that we're crossing streams. You know, in Ghostbusters, they said, don't cross the streams, Ray. But tonight we are crossing streams, and Kevin approached me and said, hey, I'd love to come on Cyber Frontiers and talk a little bit about big data cybersecurity from an enterprise perspective. And so, Kevin Schoonover, welcome to Cyber Frontiers. Great to have you.
Okay, great to be here.
Yeah, Kevin, so you're the Director of Engineering at where you work at Arrow ECS. What's that mean? What is your real job there?
So I'm Director of Engineering for a company that doesn't engineer anything. Arrow is one of the largest distributors in the world, and we have a semiconductor side of our company, and we have a computer product side of our company, which is the Arrow ECS, and you can find us at arrowecs.com. We are a distributor, so we represent product lines like IBM, HP, NetApp, EMC, lots of the networking product lines, lots of security product lines, and we sell those products to resellers who then sell them to end users. So my team is the engineering team that trains our reseller partners. We work as an extension to our vendors. We help do architectural design as far as solution set designs. So we're kind of in the thick of it with converged infrastructure and mobility and big data and kind of the changing landscape of the IT world, so to say. So as I've kind of kept in tune with what the guys on Cyber Frontiers have been talking about, a lot of times it's that academic side versus kind of where we're at in the field with these kind of things. So I thought it'd be fun just to kick around a few ideas, chat about some of the things that I'm seeing, and see how that resonates with what these guys are working on and dealing with.
Oh, very cool. You kind of titled it Challenges in a Real IT Department, and of course, these guys work both in the academic world as well in the real world as well. Mm-hmm. Both of them working for me and working at Gallup. So it's good. It's great to have this conversation. So thanks for being willing to come on. And you're a host on Home Gadget Geeks all the time. That's when I referred to the streams crossing. You know, Home Gadget Geeks and Cyber Frontiers. Although the original guy that did that was Christian. Christian, welcome back to Cyber Frontiers.
Thank you. It's good to be here, surviving the trail of never-ending midterms and preparation for finals, and it's been a inundation of work and trying to stay above water, but I'm glad to be out here tonight taking a break and talking some good stuff.
Awesome. And then his other partner, the other Batman over there in the serial room wall, Ashton Webster. Ashton, how are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to this podcast and showing off my growing collection of cereal boxes, so it's good to be here.
Which will come off the wall here in about a month, right?
Yeah, so we have.
We'll have to get a picture for it. Take a good picture before it comes down. We'll have to add it to the Cyber Frontiers page.
I have about 25 days, and then I go home for one day in New Jersey, and then I go to Omaha.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have you. It's for me today. I was like, "Oh crap, these guys are going to be here pretty quick. I better get my act together." So.
But I only had to go about maybe a little bit more than that, maybe like 6 months before meeting you in person. We'll Christian went like several years. So
He did. He went like 4 years, I think,
yeah.
before we actually got to meet. So, Christian, why don't you lead us off in this? Might be the easiest thing to do here as we talk about. Well, first of all, let me pose this question to you. When you guys are doing this from an academic, right? We say that all the time, from an academic perspective. What's the approach that Maryland takes to kind of bring an enterprise perspective to it as well? In other words, the real world. What are they doing to kind of keep it real, so to speak, for you guys?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we really try and get people to learn how to think scholastically before anything else. That's kind of the mindset of an academic institution, is get people asking the right questions, get them to learn the scientific process right, get them to understand how research works and what are the business processes behind being a scientist. And so that's what we try and provide in the on-campus environment. And then we say, okay, now go off into the real world and get some real-world experience, which more or less gets coined into, wrapped into the term experiential learning. So your internships and your summer experiences abroad and those kinds of things. So the combination of those two, we try and find that middle spot. At least for computer scientists, we really don't get them, I guess, thinking in the real world practical skills that employers are trying to hire for until they're getting to their 400 level courses. All of our undergraduate courses leading up to that, of course, are building those fundamental skills that they're going to need in a real job or in the enterprise. However, in those earlier stages, you're still kind of focusing on laying the foundation of how to think like a scientist, hence the term computer science, as opposed to being a software developer in industry and so forth.
Yeah, very cool. Ashton, let me ask you from an internship standpoint. Of course, we like to think those internships kind of prepare you for some of that. You've been working with us since early spring, but you did an internship last year. How do you feel like your internships have prepared you for some of what you think the enterprise might look like?
Well, I mean, working for internships is definitely better practical application practice than school. That's for sure. And I think that it's really changed the way that I see what software development and cybersecurity is in the real world. And not to say that academia isn't the real world when you get to research and things like that, but applying those skills is a lot more. It's just very different. And I think that if you don't have those skills by the time you graduate, it's going to pose a lot of challenges for you to kind of adapt on the fly. So I'm really thankful that I've had those opportunities, and I look forward to having some more. So yeah,
you'll get to
recommend them.
You got plenty of time. You'll get to have quite a few in that. And Kevin, let me ask you, and when we think about from an enterprise perspective, how important is it for us to give them those experiences? Do you guys participate in some kind of internship program there at Arrow?
We're really trying to. The semiconductor side of our business does a lot. The computer product side, especially in what I do, I tend to hire experienced guys out of IT, and I'm always looking for not just the really smart IT guys, but I have to find those good communication skills and the ability to teach and train, and I almost have to explain it to a lot of folks, because we've all been to that party with the technical guy who you probably wouldn't invite to the party because they just don't have the good interaction and the good function. So we're trying to do a lot more. And actually, the interesting thing is, I think in the past we've always looked at IT from an experience level point of view, so that a lot of folks coming straight out of college didn't necessarily jump into IT. And when I look at a lot of the people in IT today, a lot of your higher end network administrators, storage administrators, virtualization guys, most of them don't have college degrees, or a lot of them do not. So it's this focus on big data science. It's really kind of changing how we're looking at IT and how we're looking at probably more and more grabbing up people coming straight out of college and applying them to kind of the needs of the current IT departments.
Yeah, we're finding at Gallup, we're just finding great value in an internship program and engaging the kids very, very quickly and getting them engaged younger. We have a high school internship program as well. Ashton will get a chance to meet our high schoolers this summer, and so great opportunity to see kind of the future as these kids are very, very bright coming out of high school, and some of them have 2 or 3 years experience already at the high school level. You know, they've been writing code for the last 2 or 3 years, and so it's getting earlier and earlier. And actually, we're talking about some junior high programs. I just met with a couple folks from the state of Nebraska. They represent you know, the education branch at our state capitol. And had lunch with them today, and they're like, Jim, tell me about what you're thinking about junior high. I just thought, wow, we've really backed up the truck all the way and to get some kids involved. So anyways, along those lines, I think it's a good opportunity for you and I in the enterprise with both Christian and Ashton
Absolutely.
from the academic perspective to have these conversations. Kevin, you came at us with a whole bunch of questions. I think I'm going to just let you pose these and then start some dialogue between the four of us.
Sure. So I actually... let me share a screen here, and I promise it won't be death by PowerPoint, but over the past few years I've done quite a few sessions with partners and end users, and can you see my screen?
It'll pop up here in just a second, I hope.
Okay.
Yep, there we go. You bet.
All right. And this was kind of imagine you're an end user attending a lunch and learn session, and of course the phone would ring right at that time.
Right as you start your presentation.
Right as you're starting.
True to IT form, right?
So you'd be listening to a lunch and learn session put on by an outside guy, and that outside guy might be me. And what I really started looking at was at Arrow we had kind of 5 areas of focus. You know, so we're trying to sell technology, software, hardware, focused on mobility, focused on big data analytics, focused on converged infrastructure, the agile data center, cloud, and then wrapping everything with security. And we always ended up presenting these as 5 different things that you could potentially look at, work on. Towards the end of these presentations, I really started wrapping them all together because for the most part, it'd be tough for an IT department to, just focus in one of these areas and not deal with the others. But it really became apparent that, big data analytics was really driving a lot of this, and really coming to find that a lot of IT departments out there are having a little bit of an identity crisis these days because they tended to be the guys that protected the data. They kind of kept the users in line, and now with big data, it's all about them being an integral part of the company, and that they're providing value back to the company, not just as a cost center protecting the company's data, but working with business units to create value and to help drive the company forward. Now, I'll skip a couple of slides ahead. One of the things that has compounded this is the decision makers at an end user. Used to be when you wanted to sell some technology, you'd go call on IT administrators. You'd go call the networking guy, security guy, storage guy. And then over the past few years, it's become very heavily loaded towards application owners. You'd go talk to mail and messaging or collaboration or the database guy. Now we're starting to see a lot more decisions are made around IT that don't even involve the IT department. So business unit leaders, vice president of sales or vice president of marketing may decide on going to salesforce.com as opposed to deploying a package internally. Or the marketing team might spin up, instead of spinning up a database, they pull company data, take it out to a data warehousing company, and have them massage the data and pull the information out of it. So this was just I just wanted to give you a little, kind of a background on kind of where my thoughts were coming from and what we're seeing as things change in the IT world of this evolution from being just kind of the folks that protected the data to the folks who are now really saddled with turning data into information and getting that back out to the users.
Kevin, it wasn't long ago that we've come full circle, because it wasn't long ago in the days before IT departments, right, as big as they were, it was those businesses that they didn't call them IT, but they'd have these tech guys embedded in their business units, and they would they would buy the solutions, and somebody would come out and install them, whatever that was. And as those back end solutions became more and more complicated, we saw the growth of the IT group. And so that's a fairly, when we think about the last 25 years, that's a fairly new, this idea of having these big, gigantic IT departments is a fairly new process and going in. But you're right, we've come all the way back around where now we've been able, like the business units are now making a lot of these decisions about what they're going to purchase, and they're pushing that down to technology to say, deploy this. I'm paying for it, now deploy this.
Yep. No, absolutely. So when that starts to equate, and I guess, like one of the first things I was thinking about with Christian and Ashton is, one of the things we're starting to see, and if you think about big data, so we're a distributor for Oracle, and Arrow uses Oracle internally, and it's always surprised me that, a good Oracle database costs you a lot of money. And of course, then there's a whole industry that you go out and use to fine-tune your Oracle databases to make them actually work and work faster. And then big data really almost hits to the point of saying, hey, you've got all your data in those really nice, expensive Oracle databases, and now I want you to spend more money to actually get some tools to go out and mine these things. So we're starting to see a little bit of a trend where people are starting to question that upfront buying decision. No slam on Oracle. It could be any database, but starting to see kind of a decision-making work from the point of view of, hey, if I'm going to just focus on mining this on the backside, maybe I look at more of a lighter structure up front, and maybe that structure is MySQL. It could be any form of other databasing. Just wondering what you guys are seeing around kind of so we focus a lot of effort around the mining of information, but what are you guys seeing, or what are you talking about from a actual database structure point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trend has really gone towards having your databases be more to power your web applications and your kind of customer front ends and so forth. But there's a finite level to which that kind of makes sense to do. For example, if I'm going to run, the customer internal timesheet or payroll or any of those things, that is something that a MySQL database that's well secured and well tuned will do very well at, whether it's a PHP application or otherwise. It's really when we start talking about these business decisions based data sets where you're trying to comb through a lot of stuff really fast, and it's kind of constantly streaming in, and you're trying to bring value back to the company making decisions forward on how to increase revenue, find new technologies, discover new insights. That's where the technology, I think, sometimes it half falls on, yeah, you should still use a database for that. And the other half of the times, it just doesn't make sense. The data is unstructured. The data isn't relational in what a traditional tabular structure would suggest. And it really requires that kind of next step where you say, okay, I'm no longer really comfortable with this database, which, while the database provides me, high assurance that my data is preserved and it's in the right spot and so forth, I can go to this more pooled data structure block model where, yeah, I replicate a few times because I'm not sure about the integrity of the system, but I know I'm going to be able to process stuff really fast over really large data sets, which is going to allow me to find insights that I wouldn't find if I'm just, limiting the search query results of my table to the top 1,000 results. So I think people are starting to ask decisions on, at what point, when my database becomes X amount of size, is it worth going to a NoSQL solution, or is it worth staying in that kind of traditional world? I think that's the one question people ask. Then the second question people ask is, independent or irregardless of the data set size that I now have I gotten to a point where my data is streaming, or my data is real time, or it's converging across multiple data stores and repositories, at which point it no longer is cost effective for me to try and maintain these different silos of high grade expensive Oracle systems when I can throw together a lot more non-proprietary off the shelf hardware that will allow me to install the open source stacks that deliver some of those key performance insights. So I think we're at a point where the industry is definitely not prepared nor ready, nor should it consider going all to that kind of NoSQL big data type environment. However, we are seeing more and more that core business applications are starting to require those tools, whereas before it was kind of the thing that stayed in the research department. No one wanted it on the production network. It really didn't give value to the typical Fortune 500 from a business analytics perspective, and the use cases weren't as well defined yet. And I think we're starting to see big changes in that.
Ashton?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of things that Christian said, especially specifically the data streaming and also the NoSQL databases, both of which I worked on a lot at my previous internship. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the application Apache Storm, but one of the main things that focused on was doing the processing, or at least pre-processing of the data as it comes in. And that's not necessarily mutually exclusive with storing it in a SQL database or a NoSQL database, but you can, if you can get some of that processing up front, that can really, I think that has the potential to put the businesses that are doing that on a whole different level, because they'll get results nearly real time, and that can make all the difference for, as we see the stock trading and other highly volatile and dynamic industries like that.
Social media, right? And
Social media, yeah, exactly. And I've also done stuff with mining social media to see how events affect your reputation, like the Sony breach. So getting a little bit off the track with that, but I agree with Christian that SQL databases aren't going to go anywhere for a while. They're still the backbone of a lot of major companies, and they rightly should be, because for some things they work pretty well. For other things, I think that there's going to be a push towards NoSQL and real-time processing and things like that, but it's going to lag behind where the technology is, at least for a while. I mean, there's always that sort of enterprise lag behind what's theoretically or even in practice possible, as you get the early adopters and then the widespread adoption. So I think that it's going to take some time before all the technologies are where they need to be to do that, and also where the mainstream enterprise companies are ready to adopt that and implement it and take that investment. But I don't think that it's all that far off.
Kevin, let me ask you in this, because you alluded to this with the expense of Oracle, even with Microsoft. I mean, they go with the enterprise applications, and so we make the jump to MySQL, which, while was open source for a long time, is now owned by Oracle, but they've chosen to kind of keep it out there, and yet you do massive expense behind the scenes, right? Oftentimes, the problem, there's no licensing fee, but then you're paying somebody to come implement or whatever. In your experiencing, are you seeing, from a cost perspective, those systems being significantly less expensive to run than an Oracle or Microsoft when we talk about purchasing?
We haven't. I'd say we haven't seen them take off in the U.S. yet. When I talk to my counterparts in Europe, MySQL is very popular in Europe, and I don't know if it's, as you say, the solution base around it has been more refined there, but or it could just be people's comfort level, and I think people just don't have a comfort level with a and I won't call it a shareware, but it's a free, it's technically free, but it's a very well-founded and deserved. People are starting to look at it more and more, and we're starting to see people, and I think we'll see people kind of pick up on it as more users are making decisions. Ashton said a couple of things that I think really hit home with this too, is all IT departments, or I should say, no IT departments are on the same page with each other. So they're all moving at different paces at different points in time. So as you think about their decision-making processes, right now a lot of them are very nervous about making decisions because they don't have a lot of information. So I think we're going to see a lot more case studies, a lot more data coming out, and there'll be, and when you look at the social media aspect, that's where I think a lot of this takes off, is we're seeing more and more people turn to, hey, my company wants to move into big data, how do I do that? That used to be a question kind of taken to a vendor. Now it's kind of taken to Spiceworks and different online services to say, here's what size company I am today. Here's what my data center looks like. The boss just told me I need to, head in this direction. I don't know where to start. So that's a lot of what we see. And as time marches on, we'll see IT departments try to formulate how they're going to make some of these decisions.
Christian, for you and Ashton, feeding off of that, how much in the future do you guys are being led to the cloud for some of this stuff, as opposed to growing it yourself? I'm just going to buy it, right? I mean, you guys thinking along those lines? Is that where you think the future is, as far as when we get into these databases? I'm just going to buy it from Amazon or Microsoft or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. I would say buying the resources, like the machines or the virtualization environment or the data center that's going to run those data stores, that might be something I outsource, and there might be some things that I keep in my internal network. There might be something I put in those types of environments. I think the one thing, though, that will stay more in-house than be kind of made available as analytic modules is there will be a much higher price for software engineers than what there has been in the past, because a lot of these data analytics based initiatives where your boss walks in and says, I want a big data stack that does X, Y, and Z, database administrators don't have the same core skill set that a software engineer in computer science is going to have, and they're going to be an extreme disadvantage into implementing and adopting those technologies, because they've been their training is much more focused on systems management and the database stored procedures and those kind of things, and the new data stores of the future are a completely different animal, and it's the software engineer that really thrives in that environment, not the DBA. So I really expect to see IT departments move their staffing, not just their IT environment, to be more software engineering based focused and software development focused, and you're going to start to see less and less DBAs as these certain types of databases get phased out for certain portions of the business model. Several government agencies are finally getting to the point where they're trusting the Amazon GovCloud to put their data and their services out there, and so we're starting to see that at some of the more high security levels, that this is a thing that we expect many people to be doing in the future, and I think it's fair to say that a lot of that's been happening already. So I expect the infrastructure, a lot of people will continue to converge on the outside. The custom applications that actually deliver the business insight, I expect to continue to be done in-house with smart software engineers for the company.
Yeah, I would fundamentally agree with that. I think the trade-off is a couple things. One of which is, do you want to have the full control over what kind of processing is going to go on there, or is that a solution that you can kind of pick up off the shelf? And also, do you want to be responsible in terms of, or who do you want to be responsible for the data and the possibility of breaches there? Because I'm not entirely sure what the cloud-based policies are. If you have a breach there, who is liable for it, and how that works. But that's definitely should be part of the consideration, especially for areas where it's very important that that data stays secure. So it's good to see that apparently government agencies are starting to adopt this, which kind of surprises me. But for the best, I think, in the long run. It just is there's challenging legal and sort of control areas where you don't have the access or the I don't know what word other than control to really use over the data. So I mean, balancing those will kind of dictate what works best for your specific needs.
No, absolutely. And interesting, Christian, you brought up the software engineering aspect of it. I think, so speaking for kind of the IT end of the business, the thing that we had held from a cloud point of view was that a lot of people would put outlying periphery applications and things into the cloud. But up until about a year ago, I think I and many others had this feeling that your core applications, your core business load would stay internal to your company. And I think it was June of last year, I was at a meeting, and a couple of fairly large IT departments were talking from the point of view that, hey, we're one of them was a healthcare company, and they were moving patient records to the cloud. And the general response was, really? That seems like something you would not move to the cloud. But here was the logic behind them doing it was they had always had problems with HIPAA and meeting government governance requirements, and the company that they went with from a cloud provider point of view basically had the engineering team and the resources to say, we will make you HIPAA compliant, and we will give you the connectivity functions you're looking for, and we will give you the security functions you're looking for. So now all of a sudden, things they were having problems with that they were going to have to go hire a bunch of engineering to take care of and do, they were able to hire. So it wasn't so much going to the cloud for necessarily cloud-based resources, but it was picking up a skill set and some extra resources around that made it a much easier thing for them to move into. So I think that's what we're starting to see is a lot of the cloud providers aren't just offering compute on demand and capacity on demand. They're offering compliance, they're offering logistics, they're offering analytics. So they're starting to build out, and as you guys said, to do that, they're hiring software engineering folks to fulfill on that.
Yep. So is machine learning in the cloud a big deal, or is that just kind of at this point?
I think it's a big deal. I think it's how people leverage it. I think people are struggling to figure out how to leverage it, but the people who have niche applications where it works really well, it's a game changer. We've seen a lot of cool research in machine learning with intrusion detection where you can build amazing classifiers and patterns to detect anomalous behavior that you wouldn't have been able to do without machine learning in the same level of power before. So there is definitely targeted applications where it's incredibly powerful. The Microsoft Azure machine learning library comes to mind as something that a lot of enterprises can kind of adopt as a hands-on ready thing. Again, the people who are going to be the most qualified to implement that is going to be your software engineers. But I totally agree with Kevin in the sense that, the size of your business, if you're a small business, it's very cost prohibitive for you to hire the in-house talent to do some of those things when other people have it figured out. But when you're a large Fortune 500 company, you have the resources to do it in-house. You're going to want to do it in-house, and so that's where those types of software engineers are doing well.
Yeah, and I think I particularly like it because it gives sort of a more accurate answer to the question of what's working and what's not working. So if you're Amazon and you want to know, what sorts of variables affect whether someone purchases a product or not, and you could do a survey and you could ask people, or you could kind of make educated guesses based on what you think people like and what is pleasing to the eye and stuff like that. Or you could use this if you record the data of what pages they're looking at and what the prices were and how they fluctuated, and what the purchases were and the cost of those purchases. Then you could have a much more accurate model and exploit that to have more truthful answers in some cases, and I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of gives like a statistical or analytic approach versus just sort of a even surveys and stuff are kind of tied to how people answer and what they think versus how they actually act, and I think that's a really big difference. And that's just one example, but the point is mainly that there's huge potential here to exploit the data that you have to make a huge difference.
No, that's very true. Just because I'm based in the Twin Cities, so Target Corp is nearby, so I end up knowing people who work or have dealt there. And you look at where Target is heading towards with their apps on their tablets and phones, and that it's to guide you through the store. It's to look at, here's what you bought last time you were here. Oh, when you were at Target.com, here's what you researched. And to your point, in a lot of cases, surveys or interviews, many times people, human beings, we lots of times say what we want people to, we say what we think people want to hear versus our decision-making processes. If we just watch how we buy things and how we do things, it's probably a more honest view of that. So, whether it's the machine learning aspect, the social media aspect, on one hand, it can be viewed as that creepy big brother thing looking over your shoulder, keeping an eye on you. But on the other hand, it does give you a much better view of why you make decisions you make, and why how you arrive at those decisions. So
yeah. And one quick thing about Target, they're really good at that. If you haven't, or if you heard of the book The Signal and the Noise,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that book, and one of the examples I have from that is about Target. They have Target has a system in place where it can kind of tell when people are pregnant, and start
mm-hmm.
marketing ads at them for that. And it's funny because there have been cases where parents didn't know that
Yes,
their daughter was pregnant, and they're getting these ads from Target, and it's like,
Yep.
so it's almost better than what like you were saying, it's sometimes more truthful than you
it
would
is.
say, because it's how you act.
Yep. And actually that one plays out into a whole other thing we're starting to see is, and once again, Europe has probably done this a little more than we have, but that example falls into an area of security versus privacy. And I think in America, a lot of times we think things are secure because and privacy are the same thing, but in lots of ways we're starting to deal more and more with the difference between securing data and keeping data private, or could be two exclusive things. So it's just kind of opening up a new realm or a new challenge there.
Yeah, I think there are like kind of ethical implications there where, I wonder at one point people are going to say, well, I don't want to make a purchase here if I'm going to be heavily tracked, and my information is going to be recorded and used to try and market to me. Like, I just want to buy things and be done with it. Like, I don't need all this extra stuff. That's part of my privacy.
Right? I mean, there's huge benefits at times for them knowing what you. I mean, it makes things more convenient at times if they start narrowing in. I don't have to look all over the store. It's like, hey, I'm kind of feeling like you're probably going to be looking for this. Here it is. And,
I think that's like one case where it's a good benefit. I think a better case for privacy is probably on the social media side, where it's a free service, and it's free because you are kind of the product, and your information is part of what they're using. So
yeah, I think in general though, people are opting for convenience over their privacy. Yeah.
But I'm not sure that everybody knows. Like, I'm going to admit I haven't read every page of the privacy policy for Facebook, and I have an account there, or even Google Plus or what have you. I don't. I mean, it just comes down to I don't have the time or the intense desire to read through all of those pages. It's not that I'm necessarily not concerned about my privacy. It's just that convenience is very enticing, I guess.
It's the click buy. People, we don't read those things. We just click buy them, and we trust that it's a good company. And our IT department dug into those a lot when we first started playing around with the cloud aspect, whether it was Dropbox or Box or OneDrive, and our guys found some pretty interesting stuff that not liability over data loss, but the lack of, and so we're just providing you a space to put your stuff, and if your stuff gets hacked, that's not our fault. If your stuff gets viruses, that's not our fault. So to your point on security, that's the one aspect of that stuff that it's good to dig in a bit, but otherwise it kind of is what it is.
Kevin, it's in the notes you had said at the VM Partner Exchange, embedded security was the buzz. What are your thoughts on embedding security in software-defined networks? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So back to one of the slides I started with, where it was always my common thing of showing all these different areas within IT, and then drawing a big security circle around the whole thing. And my point was always, regardless of where your data is, whether it's in the cloud, whether it's off in a big data warehouse, whether it's in mobile user devices, you're the IT department, it's your responsibility. It's a subtle thing, but I'm kind of a visual guy, and what I really looked at from a lot of the announcements at VMworld and the Partner Exchange was, instead of looking at security as being this big balloon around everything, it was more about what does security need to look like for mobile devices, and how do we embed that into the network or the functions that deal with those mobile devices. What does security look like in a big data environment? What does security look like in the data center? And so it was a little bit more of that, where we start talking about intrusion detection, access control, UTM and user authentication, and just a lot of the other security buzzwords, data loss prevention. Where do those things actually fit, and how do we correspond those better? So I was just curious what you guys are seeing. Am I on the right track with looking at things from breaking them down into individual component areas and looking at them being more embedded in the network, or what are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I think in SDN, when we talk about components, a lot of the components themselves are the different tiers of the networking model themselves. So even trying to draw the circle around the network itself, there are huge advantages and disadvantages when you start moving into the software-defined networking world. The biggest advantage, both to security and to kind of next generation computing, is the fact that your applications now have different privileges and level of control over the network. Where, in a very kind of broad, simple home case, say I want to watch a Blu-ray movie and I want to prioritize that bandwidth, then when my Blu-ray player turns on, it tells the network, hey, prioritize more bandwidth to this particular line so that I don't buffer. That's just kind of the analogy I give. It doesn't make sense in the enterprise, but it gives you the idea of the applications now have the ability to control the network environment for the first time, where it's not kind of these automated, stagnant set of rules that are sitting on a switch somewhere. That's a big deal because that changes both the performance and reliability of applications that are network enabled, and also can change the security posture. I mean, very quickly you can have applications that say, hey, this suspect network traffic that I'm seeing, and I'm seeing these weird entries in my logs. Why don't you turn off this IP at the switch for 5-10 minutes or for a day or so forth? I mean, these are just capabilities that are going to be automated by software-defined networking that used to be a very manual monitoring job for an IT incident analyst. On the flip side of that, the whole boom in software-defined networking, and I think for the average guy, it's not always clear, why did software-defined networking become so big so fast over some of the other technologies? And for the enterprise IT environment, all of us know what that answer is. The switches that we've been buying for years, the Ciscos, the Aristas, the Junipers, the Fujitsus, are all very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars per switch. All the operating systems on them are proprietary, and whenever I want to integrate and expand my network to new parts, I still have to keep buying the same proprietary stuff from those vendors because that's the type of switch I bought. With SDN, it is the first enterprise ready / feasible model where they've taken out the controller logic from the switch and made it a dummy switch. All the switch can do is route flows over the ASIC controllers, and what that's done basically is created an open source operating system for switching, routing, and doing protocol design. And that open flow model has basically said the controller can run multiple switches in different parts of your network, and it's no longer closed source. And this is the first major thing that takes the grip away from the Ciscos and the Junipers, because now you have an open source model for building and deploying switches. And in many cases I've studied, the financial considerations are huge. I mean, we're talking 70% less operating system costs for running the same type of network using an SDN model. With that, though, you have to think a lot about, how does the security posture of that network change? Well, with a controller running all these dummy switches, that controller, as of now, I think there's some solutions out there that have addressed this. And just like Hadoop used to be a single point of failure with its name node master controller, SDN is a single point of failure in traditional setups with its controller. I think that's going to be pretty well fleshed out in the next year or so. I don't expect that to be a thing people keep talking about over and over again. The more interesting area of the research, and this is where I've started spending a lot of my time and will be next year, is using SDN at a WAN or edge device perimeter network, where it's one thing if I'm running SDN inside my private enterprise network where I got high security controls over who's in what segment of the network. But when I'm using SDN to bridge two different networks over the internet, or doing all these types of routing things where I don't have control of the physical location of the box, what is the defense mechanisms that controller has in place? And one of the big features of the controller is that you can put custom applications on it that control specific features of the network and then talk to other regular applications on the network. Who's to say that someone isn't going to hijack and put a rogue application on your controller while you aren't looking at that edge network, and then have it start doing completely different behaviors? On the converse side, SDN can be incredibly effective in security. For example, if I want to keep rotating what networks my computers are connected to within the network and move them around at random intervals. SDN provides an incredibly powerful way to do that, both for virtualized and physical clients. So there's a lot of ups and downs, and I think the boom is happening not so much because we have the ability to do dynamic networking and respond to things much more fluidly based on automated network intelligence, but it's the cost. The cost is the #1 driving factor here. I don't think cost was as big of a driving factor with Hadoop, although it was brought up a lot. The cost affiliated with SDN is the #1 driver, and whether you're talking about, the Department of Defense or a Fortune 500 company figuring out, hey, we got a tighter budget for IT this year. How are we going to keep growing our services and offerings with a smaller budget? Everyone's looking to this. Who's asking that question? Smaller budget for the next fiscal year, but I still have to grow. What's the answer? And time again, we see it's SDN. So I think that even though some people kind of question the model and what the current iteration is, the embedded security of SDN is going to be huge because people want to be able to say, hey, I made it both 70% cheaper for you to run this entire network, and it's just as secure, if not better. So that's going to be one of the biggest questions in SDN over the next 2 to 3 years, is how to prove the security and viability of the solution.
Yeah, and just to come full circle back to what Kevin was kind of talking about with whether it's better to try and do the sort of perimeter approach or the holistic approach to network security or on a case-by-case basis, I think it's in some ways just psychologically and practically it's probably easier to approach it on a system-by-system basis, because there are so many, there's just such complexity that you're kind of missing once you try and secure. I mean, not necessarily that you're advocating a perimeter approach, which is kind of inherently flawed, because it's kind of inevitable that there's going to be attackers that get in eventually. And I think that's why it's important to have those system points of security to sort of mitigate that and try and avoid the larger loss once that happens, because it's kind of not an if thing, it's more of a when thing.
Yeah.
And furthermore, it's also probably easier to have some people assigned to and prioritizing these security measures on a specific system than just being a all around everything security, which is just too broad to be effective.
No, absolutely, and I think that's so lots of different angles on it. The security aspect, the community I deal with, so vendors like RSA and Trend Micro and WebSense and Blue Coat, they're very excited from the point of view of taking their technology and getting it embedded into the SDN strategies. And to your point, and one of the other things we're seeing about everything we're talking about drives more network traffic. And traditionally, when we talk about traditional networks, it's always, well, you need more ports. And I think SDN is looking at things from, well, maybe I don't need more ports, maybe I need smarter ports, or maybe I need faster ports. And let's get out of a port. A port is 10 gig or 1 gig or 40 gig and look at the number of ports you have. So to me, that's one of the backsides of SDN, is it's starting to get a discussion going that's not a port-based discussion. It's more about network traffic. It's more about what are you trying to achieve, and that seems to be kind of an enlightening thing from the whole network discussion.
Some newer technologies. We'll shift a little bit here. Some newer technologies like Docker and this new Microsoft Nano server, which is not even out yet, but lighter, faster, kind of a response maybe to what's going on in the market. And I'll admit I don't know a lot about the container space that's coming out. I hear that word a lot, but I don't know much about it. Kevin, are you seeing, from an enterprise standpoint, it would be really early for you guys to be thinking about this. Are you starting to talk about it, some of that already?
Yeah, where we are, and where it came from is, so I'll use an example in my company. As a manager, I have to approve expense reports. So how do I approve expense reports? I get out my laptop, I make a VPN connection, I log into the Oracle financial system. I go to the account, to that area. I look at expense reports and I approve them. What's the biggest ask out of our management team? Geez, I wish there was an app that app could take me straight to approving expense reports. So we're turned into this app-minded world of hitting our own IT departments with, I don't want to go through all that stuff because that's the same process an inside salesperson uses to put in a sales order. I just want to go in and look at expense reports. So that started this momentum around apps to do different things. But when you look at apps, two things popped up. Is the average person writing an app, in the past they had written them always for company-owned equipment. And now you're writing apps that are used on non-company-owned equipment. So, security, where's the data parked, how is that being used? And then the other aspect of it is writing all these apps, is it really less expensive? Because if I'm writing this app and it has to run on something and it runs on top of an operating system and the operating system runs on top of something that's virtualized, all of a sudden my cost model looks kind of bad for that app. So Docker and Nano Server are really trying to push this idea of, hey, maybe I don't need to have a guest OS to run these apps on. Maybe if I containerize these apps, they'll run on top of a virtualization model all by themselves. So in the enterprise, I wouldn't say we're seeing it adopted widely, but it's being talked about much more rapidly than I would have seen things like that be talked about in the past.
Ashton, are you seeing that? You guys, either you, Ashton, Christian, you guys seeing that yet?
I don't really have that much experience with containers. I don't know. Maybe Christian has more to say about them.
Yeah, I think the container model has become popular because of the just like we were talking earlier about different requirements for network speed and for control and so forth. We talk about different environments that applications tend to do bigger and better, and in some cases, having that high-powered workstation is more expensive to your operating costs because the application really doesn't need anything more than its own small little world. So I think that's another really big example where the container model has been primarily driven by cost considerations, and we've had the technology and the virtualization and the hypervisors available to do this, but I think now they're making it very easy for the enterprise to rapidly deploy these solutions and manage and migrate applications to different environments for failover. And these are types of things that we've tried to make work in a very smooth and streamlined way, and this is the first kind of era where that kind of happens at a higher level than what we were doing 3 to 5 years ago.
No, the other thing, Jim, that we see, and it ties a couple of bullet points together of Docker, Nano, this granularity down to an application level is really pushing, the mobility factor. I want all this stuff on my tablet. I want all of it on my phone. So, it's that best consumption model for the user. We just got done talking about SDN a little bit, but some of the industry experts looking at the impact if things like Docker or Nano Server or applications in general become embraced very heavily, that puts it could potentially put a lot more traffic on your network. So whether that's your network internal to the company of driving data back and forth between big data sets and pushing that out to users, or out to the network in the field, whether it's your Wi-Fi network inside of your buildings or the network that people are accessing through. So we are looking also from that point of view that a lot of this flexibility and ease of use could really put a load on networks in general.
For sure.
Kevin, you got a great question here. I almost want to save it for a follow-up show. We've been going, 55 minutes, and we've been talking a lot about apps and SDN and network security and some of those kinds of things. And when we think about the future of big data, that we might be able to fill up.
That's a whole other show, to be quite honest.
Let's do another show on that one.
Yeah. I think for folks that are listening, we'll do a part 2. Kevin, we'll get you scheduled to come back, and the question will be Hadoop. So what's next, right? Hadoop is good, it's been good, but what's next? And I think we'll try and tackle that here in the next show. So as we kind of start to wrap this up, Kevin, anything that you, or all three of you, anything you guys want to put a bow on as we kind of bring this up for a close?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I would just say the one theme that we've seen across all these different topics that has driven a lot of the innovation is that a lot of these technologies are things that have been within our reach for several years now, and we just haven't found the right model or way of deploying it and making it a solution that can be commonplace for the enterprise. And I think now we're starting to see that some of that innovation is being forced because of the cost model, and as many corporations, small businesses, government agencies keep struggling with how to do more with less budget, it has driven the majority of the things we've talked about tonight. So there's actually some upsides to having some reduced budget because it forces your people to think how to do more with less, which is what we call smart engineering.
Yeah. Ashton,
Yeah, I mean,
anything?
I also wonder if it's not just the cost side, but the benefit side, where if you are an early adopter of these and you do it well, then you have an advantage over your competitors,
Sure.
and that can be in some ways a bigger deal because when you're not, a lot of companies might look at costs as, hopefully you can minimize those down the road, but the real drive is if you have these projects that are going to generate revenue and going to expand the company, then that can be really important. So I think both sides of it is going to be interesting to see drive this to new levels, and it's a good field to be in, I think.
Yeah, for sure. No, and Kevin, we always say in the enterprise, do more with less, but it's not like IT budgets have been reduced to zero, right? In some cases it's doing more with the same, or even doing more with more. I mean, we continue to find ways from the enterprise. When value is found, cost can be justified at that point, and so when we begin to look at, it's not just always like what can we do, but what can we do that brings value from that standpoint, and can that value justify more expenditure, right? I mean, you see that?
Absolutely. You think about I'm waiting for the day, and I see it once in a while, but I'm waiting for the day when you're in a quarterly business review, and the different sales managers are presenting, and one of them has just blown away all of his numbers and everything, and one of his bullets on there is the IT department really helped me out with being able to data mine, renewal revenue. I blew away my renewals because they helped me pull this together. That will get you money. That will get sales departments can go find dollars from vendors to go do things. And I think the other thing, as the guys were talking there, CIOs network with each other, and CIOs talk to each other, and it's very common that my CIO will, and I'm not really affiliated with the IT department. I'm the engineering side of our company, but I call on IT departments, and we'll talk about things from the point of view of things that Arrow is doing that he can brag about with his friends from a CIO point of view, but it's also one of hey, you guys are kicking our butt in this area. How are you doing that? And I think it gets back to kind of what we started with, is the discussion that the face of the IT department, the face of IT has changed, and it's not just the data protector folks anymore. It's the information management kind of folks. So I'm envisioning two things: a set of T-shirts. The first is the "Remain calm, the data scientists are on their way." And the other one is we got to get these other two guys here with white hats on horses, riding into town to save the day. But it is one of those where I think as an industry we have to drive this point that this is the next evolution of IT, and we're on this verge of making this change, and it's very data information driven, and the data science aspect is I think what's really going to bring this thing together.
Yeah, I think Christian, boom, that just happened. I think the days of the IT cost center are over. I mean, we've been moving in that direction where IT is now is just generating revenue in the organization, and we're a decade now beyond IT just being infrastructure, just being about email and networking and those kinds of things that you and I grew up with. These guys know nothing of it. They just expect that stuff to happen, right? We spent a decade or two making all that happen and getting all that in place so that stuff just works. And now these guys get to benefit from, having that infrastructure in place to be able to do, I think, which is the really cool stuff, which is turn this stuff into money, right?
Yes,
For the most
absolutely.
part. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
So pretty cool. Well, guys, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for coming on. We'll get rescheduled
Absolutely.
to talk about the future of big data. That'll be fun. I think that's going to be a fun Cyber Frontiers to do. We'll put these two guys, we'll give them homework and say, all right, come ready to talk about the future of big data and what that means beyond Hadoop. Because that's really, Hadoop has become kind of the poster child for big data, right, when we talk about it.
It's the standard.
So, yeah, it's what everybody kind of goes to, and so that'll be an exciting Cyber Frontiers coming up. If you're new to Cyber Frontiers, you just caught on to what we're doing here, we'd love to have you go over there and just get this automatically downloaded. Chances are, if you're listening to this, you know how to download this to a podcatcher, either on the iPhone, I don't have to explain that to you, or Android. Lots of great technologies. We have all those subscription links available at theaverageguy.tv/subscribe. Super easy. Head over there, a big page, all kinds of ways, video, audio, all kinds of stuff. If you want to know what's going on here in the network, a great way to stay up with us. We've got 19 of these in the back catalog, and you might want to go binge listen to them right now if you just caught this one for the very first time. A good idea. It'll take you 19 hours. They're about an hour in length, each one of them, and love to have you go through. Get your feedback as well. You can send that to me, jim@theaverageguy.tv, for doing that. And like I said, we have brand new video options as well if you want to watch it on YouTube or if you want to download it to your phone or your tablet. We've got both video, large and small, available for you to watch those. Again, go out to theaverageguy.tv/subscribe. If you're using Amazon and you want to benefit the Tech Guy or the Average Guy Tech Scholarship Fund, you can do that. Just use theaverageguy.tv/Amazon. And don't forget, Christian's got a pretty powerful network going on out of undisclosed location somewhere in the Northeast that is called Maple Grove Partners. And if you are looking for web hosting, I mentioned that up front, he'd love to take that on. And so go to maplegrovepartners.com. We're actually going to have Christian on Home Gadget Geeks in the next, I think we're in June at this point. Christian was the next slot I could get you in. But Kyle Wilcox had asked the question in the community, what's going on there at Maple Grove Partners? So Christian, thanks for being willing to jump on. He'll take a whole session of Home Gadget Geeks, walk through the network there, how he has it set up. It'll be really cool to kind of we've done a home tech tip on that, but Christian, will be fun to get some more detail for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one.
So we'll say thanks for listening. We'll be, if you're listening live, stay around for a few minutes. We'll do a post show. I've got to wrap it up fairly quickly. I have to head off to work for an evening podcast. But if you're listening, we want to say thanks for coming out tonight. Or if you're listening recorded, we want to say thanks for subscribing or listening to this. And we'll be back, I don't know, a couple more weeks with the next Cyber Frontiers. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Bye, guys.